Alright, 2013 Ford Fusion rear caliper replacement. This one is locked up. I noticed it was a little bit difficult to push the piston, turn and push the piston back in when I originally did the brakes about a month ago. Didn't think anything of it. I probably should have. Anyway, so it locked up, and you know, this thing I can't even turn it barely with the freaking wheel on, so it's locked up. And of course it killed the pads. Luckily it wasn't driving that far. Hopefully the rotor is still good. I don't know, we'll see. Anyway, so to start off with, obviously remove the wheel, and then you got a 7mm Allen for the slider bolts and right here. So break those free. And then the new caliper has a different size bolt on it. This one is a 12mm for the banjo bolt. That's where your brake line comes in. The new one that I got is 15mm. So just grab both those wrenches. Also, I highly recommend getting blue Loctite and either silver or copper anti-seize. I have both silver and copper, but this is the stick version, the Loctite. This stuff is great. So you're going to use this on your bleeder screws on the new caliper, so that down the line when you go to bleed the brakes for whatever reason, just, you know, routine maintenance or whatever, this thing doesn't lock up and snap off inside the caliper. Just unscrew this one. This is a 10mm. Put a little swipe of anti-seize on there and thread it back in. It'll definitely save you some heartache in the long run. So now that that's undone, remove the two slider bolts. And I didn't bring a pry bar. This thing's gonna need to be pried off. So just go against the housing and the bottom of the caliper. So yeah, and I always forget about that stupid thing. Okay. The inside pad, just rest that up top for the time being. Yeah. So it's not completely shot, but it's very close. And these things are not that old. Maybe a month and a half. So, yeah, this one's even worse. They were freaking brand new. They used to look like this. This was the other side. The other caliper was fine, but since I'm doing one caliper, I decided to do both. It only makes sense. If you're gonna do one, you might as well do the other. It's safer that way. You might develop some issues like the car is pulling when you go to hit the brakes down the road, and you don't want that. So now you're going to take your 15mm and take off the housing bracket. then these are the bolts you're going to put the blue Loctite on. Don't use the red because it's going to be a complete nightmare to remove them. You just need the blue. These brakes are power stop. I got them on Amazon. I think it was like, I want to say a little over 200 for the rears, rotors, and pads. And it's really comparable to like Advance or O'Reilly's or whatever. It's right around the same price. I figured I get a little bit more for my money with these things. So, you take your blue Loctite, like I said. Just put a little, and that's basically all you need. I already did the bleeder screw on the caliper, that's why I'm not showing you. But it's very simple to do. Now, I painted these. If you are going to paint yours, just mask off the machine surfaces where the pads ride in here and then where they seat against the vehicle on the lower control arm. And after you're done with all this, just get the brake clean out and clean up all the parts to get oils and grease and stuff like that if you happen to use anything to break these bolts free off of the rotor and pads. Okay. Next, you're going to remove the motor for the emergency brake, parking brake, whatever you want to call it. I got an impact with a 5mm Allen. This is something else you're going to use the, where is it, anti-seize on. Those came out pretty easy, and no, I did not break these free before I started recording. There's the proof. So just take the anti-seize. Same thing with the housing bolts. Just put a little swipe on there. Just coat the one side of the threads. You don't need it everywhere because as you thread the bolt in, it'll coat both surfaces. And then take this guy off. The other one came off fairly easy. Yeah, just like that. And then you're going to get your 12mm. Loosen that bolt. Get yourself a drain pan so that you're not getting brake fluid all over the place. Where's the 12mm? Okay, and now with this, it's the banjo bolt. You're gonna have two washers. There's one on top. Can you see that? Yeah, there's one on top. And then when you remove this, where's the screwdriver? Right here. Just, there's one on the bottom as well. Alright. Right there, you see it? It's kind of frozen on there. It's been on there for a while. Yeah, right there. Okay, so just remember that there's two. There's one on both sides. Each side of the banjo fitting. Alright. Now get your new caliper. Remove the plug. Oh, make sure I'm in view first. Okay. And I forgot this. The spring for the outer caliper, the outer pad, and then also one banjo bolt and the two washers, copper or brass. That's probably copper. So you're just gonna put one through here, and then through the banjo bolt, or banjo fitting rather, and then the other one's gonna go on top of the caliper, just like that. And then obviously this little tab here is gonna fit in that hole, so that's which way you're gonna orient it. There you go. And like I said, this one is a 15 mil. Give it a good enough turn on there so that, so that you're not snapping it, but also, compressing those washers a little bit so that they seat and they make a nice seal. And for later on use, I use this stuff, Silicone ceramic brake parts lubricant. This stuff is great. I actually use it quite a lot with this stuff. I'll put it in all the surfaces of the housing bracket and also on the back of the pads, just for just a quiet, for like brake dust and stuff like that, just so get rid of that squeal if you can. But the stuff that I get, it's like ceramic brake pads and all that. It's upper end stuff. I try and not to chintz out when it comes to the brakes, at least. And it typically doesn't have too much brake dust. So next thing you're gonna do is, while we're putting the the motor back on, is we're gonna crack the bleeder screw loose so that it can gravity bleed for a little bit. We're still gonna bleed them like normal. Well, not normal. I have a kit. A pressure kit, and it does it by itself, so I don't need somebody in the car to pump the brakes for me. So just loosen that bleeder screw, let it do its own thing. It'll gravity bleed and it'll start dripping out of there in a couple minutes. For the other side, there's an O-ring here. I just used a little bit of trans fluid because it's good for rubber O-rings, just to ease this going on. So I have that on the other side of the car. This is actually the trans fluid for this car, so the LV. I just use a little bit of it, obviously, just to help in the, that's it, just a little bit. Right or wrong, I don't know. I'm sure it'll be fine. It is, like I said, it is a rubber O-ring. There's plenty of rubber gaskets inside the trans. So, wipe it off the face. Alright. And then, just like came off. There we go, like that. Thread those bolts back in there after you throw some anti-seize on them. We already did that. Just make sure you thread them in there a little bit before you, if you are using an impact gun, before you hit them with the impact gun. So don't cross the threads. Come on. There we go. All right. We're still not coming out with the fluid. It's taking its sweet ass time to get down here. Meanwhile, we'll just take some of that silicone brake lube, and like I said, just put it on the machine surfaces for the pads. They can move freely. Alright, and then the inside pad is the one with the spring on it, on the back of it. That's the inside pad. Okay. Alright, now we can throw this guy on. Right, everything is tight. We gotta clean that up a little bit. There's too much brake fluid there. Throw this guy on. Get your slider bolts. Make sure you lube them up too. Okay. So, just put some on the slider. Yeah, that's a bit much, but whatever. Better than not enough. Now, you don't have to go out and get, like, a big container of this stuff. But, your brake pads should come with it. If you get a... Oh, here we go. Now it's dripping. I don't know if you can see that. The bleeder screw. So we're done with the gravity bleed. Where the hell is the freaking thing? Oh, of course, now it's in the middle of nowhere. Alright, and you don't need to kill these either. They're just little guys. And just make sure it stops leaking. That's it. That's all you gotta do. Okay. So now we'll take your 7mm. Start threading these bolts in. Alright, the only thing we didn't do here is change the rotor, but that is simple. If you're going to be doing regular brakes, just, without changing your rotor, obviously, you can, obviously the same steps, just got to remove the rotor. This one obviously is loose because, like I said, it was changed not that long ago. But if you're changing it during a normal interval, you're going to, this might be frozen. So some of them have, see, now I wasn't able to do that before. Some of them have a threaded hole. This one you can't, hang on. Yeah. Threaded hole that'll push against the axle in there, help you take the the rotor off. If you don't have that, once you remove the rotor in the housing, you can just tap it with a freaking 3-pound sledge or a hammer or whatever you got, rotate it a little bit, tap it again, rotate it, tap it again, and eventually it'll work its way off. So I think that's it. We got everything tight. Like I said, 7 mil. After you're done with the bolts, the caps that they came with are, actually I don't have the cap, well I do, but not over here, but these are the caps right here. Just push those into the end to keep the slider bolts out of the weather. Yeah, I think that's it. I'll bolt the wheel on. I believe you torque those to about 110 foot-pounds for the lug nuts. And then all we gotta do after this is to bleed it. I'll get that set up and be right with you. One thing I did forget to mention is that don't forget to put your the spring clip back on and the brake fluid. Apparently, my paint doesn't like the brake fluid too much, so yeah. So there's that. That was time well spent. Anyway, gonna set that bleeder up. Okay, so this is the thing. This is a Motive Products power bleeder. Basically, you just put the brake fluid in here, pump that thing up to about 15 psi. I don't know if you can read it. Yeah, there you go, 15 psi. And you are going to take this power bleeder, model 1109. It says European adapter, but it also works on this. Unscrew your cap. Place it somewhere. There. And then thread this guy on there. And then it's just like a, what's it called? A fitting for your air compressor, like an air gun or whatever. A quick connect, quick disconnect, whatever. Right here. Alright, so now, if you have any leaks at this point in time, this is where you're going to see them. Just take, well, the kit comes with this freaking hose. It's just regular, it's not vacuum line, but clear poly line. I think it's like 1/8 inch. Just push it on top of the bleeder screw itself, and just get a can or a bottle or something to bleed it into so it's not going everywhere. Also, when you're bleeding brakes, you want to start at the right rear, furthest away from the master cylinder. Go from the right rear, to the left rear, then to the right front, then to the left front, to push all the air down the line. So you're just going to crack it loose. Now, obviously, if you don't have the power bleeder, this is where you would have the person in the car holding the line, holding the pedal, but you'll see all the air. That's actually, we did a good job of gravity bleeding it because there's no hardly any air in there. Now there's some. Yeah, that's what you don't want in the system, obviously. That'll give you a mushy pedal. It'll give you obviously poor brakes because the system's trying to compress air as opposed to liquid, which obviously you can't compress a liquid, so that's why your brakes work. So now we're solid fluid. We can close it off. There's no more air in there. And we're good to go. Okay. Now, obviously you still have the fluid left in there. Just cap off the top. Pull the hose off, if it lets you. And then you still have all that fluid in there. Put your little cap on there. Now obviously this is the point in time where you'll, if you have any leaks, you'll see them, because you have that power bleeder, or like I said, if you have somebody in the car holding the brakes, you'll see it leaking from the banjo fitting, the bolt, whatever, the washers. We're good here, there's no leaks. And the other side is good. We're ready to go. Just take, like I said before, take some brake clean up the rotor, clean up the pads, get all that nasty oil off there so that you have brakes that are ready to stop. Hope this helped. Have fun.